Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says President Donald Trump is still open to talks with Iran on a new way forward. In an interview, the Pentagon chief says the United States is willing to hold talks with Iran without preconditions. This comes amid ongoing U.S.-Iran tensions following the killing of Iran's top military commander Qasem Soleimani earlier this month, and the subsequent Iranian strikes against the U.S. military bases in Iraq. Meanwhile, Trump has warned Iran against killing protesters who have risen up over the downing of a Ukrainian passenger jet by an Iranian missile. Earlier, British Ambassador Rob McCare was briefly detained at the demonstration in what the UK called a violation of international law. Iran's deputy foreign minister said McCare was arrested as a foreigner at an illegal gathering but was freed soon after being identified. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for the accountability of those behind the crash of the Ukrainian passenger plane. This comes after Iran said its military had mistakenly shot down the Ukrainian plane, killing all 176 on board. In a televised address, Zelensky said he agreed with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani on a joint probe into the incident. In a press briefing, Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Iran did the right thing by admitting that it shot down the jet. He also said Canada wants clear answers from Iran to determine whether the plane was shot down mistakenly. Qatar and Iran have agreed to de-escalate said the de-escalation is the only solution to the regional tensions. This was said by Qatar's Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani after a meeting with Iran's President Hassan Rouhani in Tehran. Al Thani said dialogue is the only way to resolve the crisis. The visit comes at a time of heightened tensions between the United States and Iran. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi has arrived at Tehran on the first leg of his diplomatic mission to ease tensions in the Middle East. Pakistan's Foreign Office said Qureshi will meet his Iranian counterpart to discuss the situation after the killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani. It said Qureshi will share Pakistan's perspective on the current situation by stressing the imperative of avoiding any conflict. Later, the Foreign Minister will travel to Washington on 15th of January to discuss the Middle East crisis with the Trump administration. Moreover, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has arrived in Saudi Arabia as part of a 5-day trip to the Middle East to help ease regional tensions. Abe's delegation was received by senior officials, including Economy Minister Mohammed Al-Tujaidi and Riyadh Governor Prince Faisal bin Bandar bin Abdul Aziz. Abe will make a trip to the historical site of Al-Ula, where he will have a meeting with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He will travel to the UAE on Monday for a meeting with Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The Japanese Prime Minister will also visit Oman, where a new ruler was sworn in yesterday. During the trip, Abe will brief leaders of the 3 countries on the deployment of Japanese self-defense forces to the Middle East. At a time of heightened tensions in the Middle East, South Korea has summoned Iran's ambassador after he implied bilateral ties could suffer if Seoul dispatched naval forces to the Strait of Hormuz. Ambassador Badamchi Shabastari made the remarks in an interview last week. The Iranian envoy denied directly mentioning the possible severing of diplomatic ties. South Korea's foreign ministry lodged a protest over his remarks. The U.S. has been pressuring South Korea to join its maritime security campaign in waters of Iran. Iraqi Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi has told the Kurdish leaders that he does not seek a hostile relationship with the U.S. The caretaker Prime Minister held a meeting with the Kurd leaders in Erbil in his first visit to the autonomous region since coming to power in 2018. Mahdi met Iraqi Kurdistan's Prime Minister Masroor Barzani, President Nashrivan Bazrani and influential power broker Masoud Barzani. Earlier, Washington rejected Iraq's request to work on American troops' withdrawal amid heightened U.S.-Iranian tensions. In Libya, both the warring factions have accused each other of violating a ceasefire as fighting continued around the capital Tripoli. Earlier, both the Libyan National Army and the internationally recognized Government of National Accord said they conditionally agreed to the truce. The GNA said it recorded gunfire in the Salahuddin and Wadi Rabia areas minutes after the ceasefire was meant to start on Sunday. Whereas rival LNA commander Al-Mabrouk Al-Ghazawi said the UN-backed government violated the truce on more than one battlefront. But Turkey said it had observed that all sides were trying to abide by the ceasefire and that the situation was calm except for one or two separate incidents. On Wednesday, Ankara and Moscow asked Libya's warring parties to declare a ceasefire in a conflict drawing increasing foreign involvement. In India, Indian police baton charged demonstrators in West Bengal state as nationwide protests against the disputed citizenship law entered a second month. Police said protesters were trying to storm past barricades to stop Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vehicle outside the stadium. They said over 100 protesters have been detained. Chanting slogans of fascist Modi, nearly 2,000 protesters gathered outside the stadium. Protesters said the government cannot suppress their voice. Widespread demonstrations have rocked the country since the law was approved by the parliament last month. Critics say the law is an attempt to marginalize Muslims. Now adding the story of Indian Occupied Kashmir, where Indian troops have martyred 3 more Kashmiri youths in Pulwama district. The occupying forces have martyred 6 Kashmiris in the running month so far. The civilians were martyred during a cordon and search operation in the Taral area of the district. The report said the operation started earlier this morning. The occupied valley is reeling under New Delhi's curfew and the communications blackout for the past 161 days. In a related development, the Muslim televangelist Dr. Zakir Naik says New Delhi offered him safe return in exchange for the support over occupied Kashmir issue. Naik is currently living in self-exile in Malaysia since 2016, facing charges of hate speech and inciting terrorism. In a video message, Naik said an Indian government representative met him in Malaysia under direct orders of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Naik said he was asked to support India's decision of revoking Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. The televangelist said he refused the offer as the step is unconstitutional and takes away the rights of Kashmiris. He said the representative said New Delhi wants to use his connections to improve relations with Muslim countries. Indian government's data shows there have been almost 1,500 acid attacks in the country in 5 years. In a report, the Indian National Crime Records Bureau presented data from 2014 to 2018. The data showed 623 individuals were attacked by acid in 2017 and 2018. The report points out only 149 attackers were charge-sheeted in each year. It said Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal and Delhi were among the 10 worst states with the highest number of acid attacks. More stories to follow right after a short break. Welcome back. In Thailand, thousands have participated in a run to protest against the government. The organizers of the Run Against Dictatorship event said more than 10,000 people registered to attend the protest that appear to be the biggest show of dissent. Protesters chanted "Long live democracy" while running the 2.6-kilometer course amid a light presence of security forces. Some runners gave a 3-finger salute of resistance to the former junta leader, Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The protest prompted a rival event held in another park where thousands turned out to show support for Prime Minister Prayut. Taiwan's incumbent leader, Tsai Ing-wen, has won the presidential elections, defeating Han Kuo-yu by a wide margin. Following her win, Beijing said it will not change its position on Taiwan, saying there is only one China in the world. Speaking to reporters after winning the polls in Taipei, Tsai said she hopes to restart talks with China. Earlier results from the Central Election Commission showed Tsai secured over 57% of the votes, a record 8.2 million. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Japan's Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi congratulated Tsai on her re-election. In Nigeria's northeastern border state, 5 militia members were killed by ISIS fighters in an offensive. Authorities have recruited local hunters as a militia to guard the town after the withdrawal of the Nigerian military. Militia leader Babakura Kolo said ISIS fighters attacked Gajiram town from their pickup trucks fitted with machine guns. He said assaults targeting troops and residents have increased recently in the state. The decade-long conflict in northeast Nigeria has killed 36,000 people and displaced around 2 million. Meanwhile, Boko Haram militants have killed 4 villagers and kidnapped 4 women in western Chad. Security officials said the fighters attacked the village of Alom along the border with Nigeria. The insurgent group has been waging attacks in Nigeria for the past 10 years. It has spread around the area bordering Cameroon and Chad. Last month, they killed 14 fishermen in the nearby village of Kaiga and kidnapped 13 others. In Spain, thousands of protesters gathered outside Madrid's City Hall to protest against the new Spanish coalition government. The rally was organized by the far-right Vox party after Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez added 5 ministers from the far-left party to his cabinet. Shouting slogans, the protesters called on Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to defend the constitution and the Spanish unity. After nearly a year of caretaker governments, Sanchez won parliamentary support for Spain's first coalition government last week. Though the development ended the political stalemate, it left Sanchez reliant on fragile alliances to pass the laws. Robert Abela has been elected as Malta's Prime Minister after Josep Muscat resigned over a probe into the murder of an investigative journalist. In October 2017, Daphne Galizia died in a car bomb attack close to her home. Abela was elected leader of the governing Labour Party, making him the new Prime Minister of the Mediterranean country. The leadership election was contested between Abela and Deputy Prime Minister and Health Minister Chris Fearn. Muscat's party members are already rooting for a revival and resurgence of the party. We move on to Venezuela now, where opposition leader Juan Guaido has ruled out resumption of negotiations with President Nicolas Maduro. Guaido told his supporters in Caracas that Maduro administration had repeatedly deceived the public and therefore cannot be trusted. The details in this report.
Norway mediated negotiations last year, but the talks broke down in August after both sides accused each other of breaking terms. Earlier this week, Guaido survived dramatic attempts to remove him as head of the National Assembly. Venezuela's self-declared acting president, Guaido, has called for new protests to drive out Maduro.
We need to go out onto the streets to protest, to demand in an organized way together, to put pressure. Never again, never will we go down on our knees before the dictatorship. We will never stay silent whilst we are oppressed.
Despite the political and financial crisis, Maduro retains the military support, while according to polls, Guaido's popularity has fallen below 40%.
It's time for a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Moving on, tens of thousands have marched in Glasgow calling for a second referendum on Scotland's independence. Organisers said almost 80,000 pro-independence demonstrators took part in the march as strong gusts swept through Glasgow. The participants carried pro-Scottish banners and paid homage to the pro-Catalan independence movement in Spain. The pro-independence march was organised by All Under One Banner, a Scottish independence group established in 2014. 11 migrants, including 8 children, are killed after the boat capsized off Turkey's western coast. Turkish state media says 8 others were rescued from the Aegean Sea near the town of Sesame. It said the Turkish Coast Guard carried out the rescue operation. The boat capsized just hours after another boat sank in the Aegean near the Greek island of Paxi, leaving 12 dead. The nationality of the victims is not yet known. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has expressed regret over his handling of the bushfire crisis. In an interview, he said he will propose a judiciary inquiry into the response to the disaster. As the fires claimed another firefighter's life, the PM faces criticism for his government's climate policy. The Australian bushes are burning for nearly 3 months now and have killed 28 people. Morrison rejected criticism that his government had not done enough before the bushfire season started. He also pledged $76 million as extra fund to help affected communities cope with foreseeable mental health issues. Morrison said the Royal Commission would be appointed after consultations with the states.
I think there's obviously a need for a national review of the response. And let's not forget, they're not finished yet. I think that is what would be necessary, and I'll be taking a proposal through Cabinet to that end. But it must be done. But it must be done in consultation with the states and territories.
11 people are dead due to massive storms sweeping across parts of the southern U.S., bringing high winds and heavy rain. Around 1,000 flights were cancelled and hundreds of thousands were without power in 5 states: Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Deaths were reported in Alabama, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. The states of Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas suffered property damage but reported no injuries. More than 20 million people remain at risk of tornadoes and flooding, with Alabama said to be most at risk. The storms also brought damaging tornadoes to Alabama, Kentucky, and Mississippi. In the Philippines, authorities have suspended flights at the Manila's International Airport after a volcano in nearby Batangas province spewed a giant plume of ash. The tall volcano generated a 1-kilometer high ash plume accompanied by rumbling sounds and tremors earlier in the day. Passengers have been advised to coordinate with their respective airlines for details on flight schedules. The local disaster office said it has evacuated some 2,000 residents living on the volcanic island. Another weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.